Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass issued a curfew for parts of downtown Los Angeles on Tuesday following intense days of protests over immigration enforcement raids that have left crews to clean up the wreckage and seen thousands of National Guard troops sent to the city. In a news conference, Bass said the curfew will run from 8 p.m. Tuesday to 6 a.m. Wednesday, in an effort to curb ongoing vandalism and looting in downtown Los Angeles. Bass announced the curfew while many people in the city were out marching through the streets and protesting against the ICE raids. The curfew was announced to stop bad actors who are taking advantage of the president's chaotic escalation, Bass asserted in a social media post. Law enforcement will arrest individuals who break the curfew, and you will be prosecuted. Nights of volatile protests have prompted a legal and social media standoff between California leaders and the Trump administration. The conflict centers on Trump's move to deploy Marines and the National Guard in California in response to protests that have sprung up against U.S. immigration and customs enforcement sweeps. California Gov. Gavin Newsom filed a lawsuit against Trump for deploying federal troops in the city. Newsom has also accused Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth of trying to use the assets to help ICE conduct raids. A judge set a hearing for the matter for Thursday. Newsom's efforts to block federal incursion in California come after Trump doubled the National Guard presence in Los Angeles to 4,000 and deployed 700 Marines, an escalation estimated to cost about $134 million, according to a Pentagon official. Trump remained all in on his decisions, posting on Truth Social that if we didn't send out the National Guard, Los Angeles would be burning right now. Since Friday, officers have had confrontations with protesters, leading to the use of pepper spray and flashbangs as officials announced more than 150 arrests amid flare-ups of vandalism and violence. Bass on Tuesday said damage was limited to a small area downtown, but noted that the graffiti was extensive and required a large response as the city prepares to host the 2026 World Cup. What to know about the curfew? The curfew issued by Bass covers a 1 square mile area of downtown Los Angeles and will last from 8 p.m. Tuesday until 6 a.m. Wednesday local time. The mayor said she expected the curfew to last for several days. Bass announced the curfew while people were marching through the streets, where protests had turned into vandalism and looting earlier in the week. Police have made over 150 arrests in response to the protests, including over 100 the night before the curfew was announced. In a statement about the protests Monday night, Los Angeles police said that as demonstrators were being dispersed, agitators and miscreants within the crowd looted businesses and vandalized property. California officials have said that Trump's move to send federal troops to the city has only exacerbated tensions and prompted more unrest. Newsom on Trump, rule of law has increasingly given way to rule of dawn. Newsom delivered a fiery speech Tuesday night, sharing details about what sparked the protests in California's biggest city and what the president's reaction says about the state of the nation. This situation was winding down and concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown, but that's not what Donald Trump wanted, Newsom said. He chose escalation, he chose more force, he chose theatrics over public safety. Newsom said Trump did not consult with California law enforcement leaders and commandeered National Guard troops to Los Angeles streets illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, Newsom explained. Newsom said the protests were sparked by unprecedented immigration enforcement raids that saw federal agents jumping out of unmarked vans outside Home Depot to detain people. The governor added that a U.S. citizen 9 months pregnant was arrested, a 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing. Trump has said his immigration policy is meant to root out criminals and people illegally in the country, adding that deploying federal troops to Los Angeles was necessary to protect federal buildings from vandalism and keep the peace. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next, Newsom said. This moment we have feared has arrived. The rule of law has increasingly given way to the rule of dawn. Protesters take to the streets of Chicago, other U.S. cities. Chicago, hundreds of people gathered in the city's iconic Loop neighborhood on Tuesday to protest ICE and the immigration enforcement raids that sparked widespread demonstrations in Los Angeles. Marchers gathered at Daley Plaza near the federal courthouse, marched under the tracks of the L train and down Michigan Avenue. Demonstrators carried Mexican flags, Signs reading "None of us are free unless all of us are free" and chanted a slogan in Spanish insulting immigration authorities. Protesters marched through Chicago at the same time that people took to the streets in Los Angeles. Watch the protests here. Contributing, Reuters. Judge balks at Newsom request to limit Trump use of National Guard. Judge Charles Breyer balked at Newsom's request to block the Trump administration's use of the National Guard and Marines on Tuesday. Instead, Breyer ordered a briefing on Wednesday and a hearing on Thursday. Earlier in the day, the Trump administration called Newsom's motion for an emergency temporary restraining order legally meritless, in pursuit of an extraordinary, unprecedented, and dangerous court order, and claimed the court has no authority to weigh in. Sarah Wire. Trump says troops sent to LA are defending the Republic. President Donald Trump said in remarks from Fort Bragg in North Carolina that service members deployed to California are defending the Republic itself and helping the administration liberate the city of Los Angeles. They're stopping an invasion, Trump said, in late afternoon remarks. The Republican president said California Gov. Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass, both Democrats, are incompetent and suggested without evidence that troublemakers, agitators, and insurrectionists were being paid to undermine federal immigration law. Asked by a reporter if he was accusing Newsom and Bass of paying demonstrators, Trump said somebody was but not necessarily the Democratic politicians. He was just asked by reporters about this remark and he said somebody is paying for it, without specifying who. And if they're not, they're just troublemakers, he said. I believe some Boyd is paying them, Trump said, as the entire world can now see, uncontrolled migration leads to chaos, dysfunction, and disorder. Francesca Chambers. Has Trump overblown the threat of protests? Residents, officials say yes. Trump's deployment of thousands of troops to the nation's second-largest city has unleashed indignation and anger among residents and local officials who say the threat of immigration protests has been dramatically overblown by the White House. The implication is that Donald Trump is waging a war on us personally, said protester Charlie Knowlton, 30. Immigration agents carrying out Trump's goal of deporting 1 million undocumented immigrants annually sparked a series of sometimes violent protests in the greater Los Angeles area. Trump has dispatched 4,000 members of the National Guard and 700 Marines to Los Angeles, arguing that local law enforcement is overwhelmed. Few of those troops are actually on the streets, however. The Los Angeles Police Department alone has about 9,000 officers to serve the city of nearly 4 million people sprawling across a land area that's one-third the size of Rhode Island. The larger Los Angeles metro area has more than 18 million residents and covers an area nearly the size of Maine. Local authorities say they have detained about 150 people in connection to the unrest that left small areas of the 5.8 square mile downtown marred with pervasive graffiti and a few broken windows. No serious injuries have been reported. We all know this is a power grab, Knowlton said before taking a selfie in front of a line of LAPD officers in riot gear. What I want right now is for the city police to grow a spine and stand up to the feds. Read more here. State asked judge to stop troops in LA from helping ICE. The motion says the state on June 9 became aware that the National Guard units in California would be providing support for counter-immigration operations and not only at federal buildings. Specifically, these activities, scheduled to begin today, June 10, 2025, will include holding a secure perimeter in communities around areas where immigration enforcement activities would take place, and securing routes over public streets where immigration enforcement officers would travel, the motion said. The filing did not say how the state received word about the alleged change in operations. The 4,000 California National Guard members called in by the president were originally tasked with protecting federal buildings and other property of the federal government. The Trump administration has not responded to the motion or Newsom's allegations that the troops were going to be used for immigration enforcement. LA Mayor, we're an experiment. Mayor Karen Bass, asked why Los Angeles would be targeted, said she believes her city is an experiment. If you can do this to the nation's second largest city, maybe the administration is hoping this will be a signal to everybody everywhere to fear them, that you federal government that historically has protected you can come in and take over, she told reporters in a news conference Tuesday. Bass said she would be reaching out to President Trump. Asked what she would tell him, she said, "I want to tell him to stop the raids. I want to tell him that this is a city of immigrants. I want to tell him that if you want to devastate the economy of the city of Los Angeles, attack immigrants." Minus Phaedra Tredan,